All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Inside Bitcoin Spaces with Jason and Andrew. Today is Friday, February 27th, 2026. Bitcoin block height, 938,596. Bitcoin USD price is 65,839. Today we have a special guest, co-founder of Spaces Protocol, Mike Carson. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me on the show.
Great. Thanks for accepting our invite. We're anxious to find out a little bit about kind of your history with the project and what preceded it and motivations. So however you like to kind of do your origin story as it pertains to this, you don't have to go way back, but anything you think that's pertinent that kind of helps people understand why we're here, why Spaces Protocol exists.
Yeah, I mean, I usually start with Park.io. I started a domain name drop catching service in 2014. I got into domain names because I like to launch projects and stuff, and you need domain names for that. And so there was one domain name I was looking at, and it expired, and I looked into like when is it going to become available again, and all this stuff. And I wrote the script to alert me when it became available. And I was like sitting down to dinner, and I got this email message that it was available. So I ran. It was already taken. I was really mad, but then it made me look into like the whole system. I was like, how did he get it so fast? And so I created these scripts to get expiring domains, and then that led to Park.io, starting Park.io, which grew really nicely and led to me owning and managing 3 ICANN accredited registrars, working really closely with registries.io, .ai, .com, .ly, and just getting really to know all that, the whole domain name system, and from the inside, and it is pretty interesting. But that led to, well, at the same time, I was really into Bitcoin and just thought it was a revolutionary thing. It's just an amazing thing that like money that's not controlled by anyone, and it's all done with math and stuff. I thought it was so awesome, and I loved that. I loved the idea. I loved the cypherpunk idea that people. The system was too slow to make changes. Like, can you imagine trying to, launch decentralized money through the traditional means of like calling your state representatives or whatever? I love that they were like, we're going to go around it and we're just going to use math and programming, and we're going to change the world. Like we're going to completely upend the financial system. So I love that whole cypherpunk ethos, and I understood how important it was, and so domains, domain names are similar in a lot of ways. They're digital assets. Like, why should they be centralized? Why shouldn't they be on a blockchain? I just had this conviction that domain names are, naming is something that you should be able to own yourself. You should be able to own your own name. And so that led to looking into other solutions like Namecoin and DNS and Handshake. And actually, Impervious was started like working on Handshake. But after working on that, realized some major issues with it. And so then, we decided to do Spaces, because from the beginning, even before Handshake, I was like, why isn't it on Bitcoin? Like, why isn't it anchored in Bitcoin? And that seemed to make sense. So that's what led to Spaces.
Gotcha. It's funny. I had a very similar experience. I had a condo that I had bought, and the developer had this really choice DNS domain name, and I wanted it for our condo association, and but I didn't want to ask the developer because we kind of were sour on the developer. So I was like, I don't want to ask him. As soon as I ask him, he's going to renew it and keep control of it. So I didn't want to ask him, even though I knew probably who I could ask. And so I'm like, I noticed that they didn't do anything with it, and I waited and I waited and I waited, and I knew it was coming up for expiration, and I knew there was a grace period, and I waited, and it wasn't getting renewed, and the grace period was running out. And I'm like, okay, I knew exactly when the grace period was going to run out, and I'm like sitting there, and I don't know, GoDaddy or whatever, with my finger on the button, ready to buy it, and as soon as the moment it expired, it was gone. And I'm like, what the heck? What? And then I'm like, oh, I know why. I know why. Because there's somebody that just scoops these things up because they expect that somebody had poured their heart and soul into building something on that domain name, and that they just maybe still do, maybe still have a bunch of users that are hitting it, all the time. Who knows? But the fact is that, somebody put their sweat equity into that domain name and built some sort of community around it. And so there's going to be old links linking to it, places that people go that are going to get people back to that site. And if they forget to register it or renew their registration, it expires. And all that potential just kind of unsolicited traffic, they just redirect it to an advertising site of some sort, buy this protein powder or something, right? And I'm like, yeah, that probably is a good business because you're basically harvesting off the goodwill of others. You're basically harvesting this the dustbin of the failed or half-hearted web creation efforts that somebody and they probably would have renewed it had they remembered to renew it, right? So I don't know. The more I thought about it, the more I'm like, yeah, that's why sometimes when I go to websites that are old ones that I have in my old links and stuff, I get to these ad sites. It's not the site I remember, it's now some ad site, and I'm like, oh, that's why. It makes sense now that they're just I kind of think of it some of these Arbonne or some of these other multi-level sort of sales marketing sort of things. It's you're really leeching off the goodwill of your relationships, right? Even selling things like Girl Scout cookies, people buy it because they want to be nice to you, not that they need Girl Scout cookies. I mean, of course, Girl Scout cookies are nice, but still. But things these other sorts of things, these multi-level marketing things, and it's it's just the human nature, right? That they're trying to sponge off of someone else's efforts. That's how I looked at it, anyway.
Yeah, I know. Some of that stuff is, I know. It's interesting. I mean, domaining, there's it is kind of digital real estate, and there's there is a lot of different ways to do it and stuff. I mean, I hate when you go to a website, you click on something, and all these ads pop up, and it's the bottom feeders of the internet or something, people making money off of the traffic that was there. But I'm guilty of it. I've done that. I'm not proud, but I have done that in the past with some of my names.
Well, Jason, you had some thoughts you might want to ask Mike.
Yeah, I had some questions written down here. So let's get to a couple of these. So Mike, You just talked about all the years you spent in the traditional domain industry with managing the ICANN accredited registrars, Park.io. What finally convinced you that the entire DNS system needs to be replaced rather than just improved?
Well, I mean, it just comes down to like control. Like I saw, some of my customers, Park.io customers, have their domains taken from them, and that's not right. Like you can't just take somebody's. I didn't. So I think that experience of like just having no say, like it's even like as a registrar, like you're at the whim of the registry. And like so, as a user is kind of at the whim of a registrar, and then the registrar is at the whim of the registry, and then the registry is like under control of ICANN. So, it's all this like lack of like. There's no reason. It's like why is it set up? I can understand why it was set up this way before blockchain and stuff like that, but like now there's no reason for that, and the only reason it continues is for control. Like people want the control of it, I think, to be able to take the domain names because the internet's so important and like they want to control it, I think, a lot of it. I mean, even if there is like Spaces becomes really popular and is used, I think a lot of people will still want, just like people use banks and stuff like that and use dollars instead of Bitcoin. I think people will still use it, but yeah, I think for me just seeing the feeling helpless basically when you can't do anything. Like when the registry's like, we made this decision, it's like, okay, like I can't do anything about it. Like it's like they have complete control over it. So yeah, I think that was what made me realize, that we need.
I think one of the misconceptions people have about DNS, they hear about, there's this DNS and you get, there's these .com, these big top level names. And if you look into it in any way, you find out that, there's 12, I think it's 12 root servers that handle all the top level names in DNS. And I think the misconception is like, 12 root servers, and then they delegate, like, if you buy a domain under .com, then the .com one says, okay, this guy over here, he handles this, something.com. And the perception that people, I think, get that's misunderstood is that, it's decentralized because there's all this delegation, all these servers, redundancy. You have to set up, back in the day when I did network admin, you had to set up your own DNS server and a backup DNS server just because there was no easy services that really did that for you. And so you kind of got into like, getting the zone file just so and blah, blah, blah. Well, you think kind of that you kind of get lulled into this, it's all decentralized because of all the redundancy. But the reality is it's heavily distributed, but not decentralized. And I think that's an important distinction for people to understand. I think the other thing is like, well, it works almost all the time. What's the problem?
Yeah, exactly.
I like, it's rare that, you get DNS failures. There's so much caching that happens. It's in the browser, it's at your gateway, all upstream, which is true, and that can cause a lot of problems, especially when something goes wrong. We've seen this where Cloudflare, which is a content delivery system that brings that content closer to you as a user, has had DNS issues where it just takes down the whole their whole system for a while until they get and when DNS gets poisoned, if somebody maliciously takes over some of these servers and puts out the wrong answers when you're looking up a name, the typical wait time to try again, even if the problem gets fixed, the wait time for that fix to be realized around the world can be like a day to 2 days. So you might find something broken, fix it, and it's still, might be broken for a while. And if you're running a big business, that can be $1 million worth of revenues lost or something like that. So yeah, it's like, I think we take it for granted a lot that it's just always there for us, but that never addresses the ownership and the sovereignty, the property, elements of it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when I was at BitDevs New York City, like a lot of core devs had those same misconceptions. Like they thought like DNS is decentralized because it's distributed, and they think it's like not going to break because it's been around for so long. But yeah, it's like, I think a lot of people miss the main point, which is that naming is completely controlled and completely centralized. So yeah, it's like you can't rely on, you can't trust name, like you can't own and trust the naming because it's centralized and it's controlled by third parties. And I mean, this even goes to like, I mean, I could go on and on, like this even goes on to like, encryption, like third-party certificate authorities, like you need a third party to encrypt traffic. And it's like, it's kind of ridiculous, when you think about it. So it's something that, yeah.
Yeah, the fact that Let's Encrypt even exists is kind of amazing to think that at least you're not beholden to spending, gosh, there was times when I was spending like $800 a year just for a server certificate, back when VeriSign kind of ruled the roost. So, but
it's like, why should you have to encrypt your traffic with somebody else's keys?
Right.
Like, you don't have to, with Dane and stuff. So like if you own your name and there's no reason you should have to do that, So.
Yeah, that's another important point. So maybe talk about HTTPS and how that's a vulnerability as well.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact, if you want to, so this is how Buffer and I met first.
Awesome.
We were on the Handshake. We were both early on in the Handshake community and on the Telegram thing, and he built this thing called Let's Dane, I think it was called, and it showed how you could do HTTPS without a third-party certificate authority. You could like encrypt your traffic to your Handshake name, do HTTPS without a third-party certificate authority, and so he posted it in there, and it kind of got lost. But then I flagged it like to look into it later, and so then I set it up on one of my names, and it was like, wow, this is so cool. Like you don't need a third party involved. You don't have to encrypt traffic to your website with somebody else's keys, and so yeah, I brought it back up to him. I was like, this is cool. Look, I set it up here, and so yeah, anyway, we started talking through from that, and that's basically, and then that's how he got involved with Impervious and joined, and we created the first, Impervious created the first browser that used Dane, where you could do encrypt, where you could do HTTPS without third-party certificate authorities. And that was the Beacon web browser, which did Handshake names. So yeah, so all that was like carefully considered, when we did Spaces, when we designed Spaces.
Well, that leads me into my next question here. Looking back at your contributions to both ENS and Handshake, what were the key lessons that shaped Spaces protocols, no token, no foundation, and no new chain philosophy?
Yeah, I think of a lot of it, was our experience with Handshake. I mean, they had a separate token, which was this is when I first saw Handshake, I thought it made a lot of sense. It was a fork of Bitcoin, and I liked how they replaced the root level, and I liked the auction system and how the proceeds were earned. So there's a lot of stuff that made a lot of sense. But after working with it for a while, I saw the price of the token Handshake kept going down and down, and that affects the security of the chain because miners are not making much. And and then I saw there's this huge pre-mine, like the founders got all these Handshake tokens, and it's like it's like, okay, this could have been done better if there's no it would have been more cypherpunk if there's no pre-mine. And I know of people who would not touch Handshake because of the pre-mine, which I understand, like hardcore cypherpunk people. And so, and a lot of these things, this is all new stuff. So it's like, you kind of just have to guess when you're building something like this, like, is this the right way to do it and stuff? So it's like, I don't blame the founders. It's just, it's just like after what they've done, like you can kind of learn from the past and stuff. So maybe somebody will learn from the past with Spaces, but with Handshake, they had that pre-mine really affected things, and also the separate blockchain and token affected the security of it, and also it made it hard. Just that whole thing made me realize it's like, this should be on Bitcoin. It's so much. There's already a huge ecosystem on Bitcoin. Why not take advantage of that? It's the most secure blockchain by far, most secure proof of work blockchain by far. It's like, why not anchor it in that? And you don't have to worry about a separate token. It's much more cypherpunk. You don't have, so a lot of those lessons were from my experience with Handshake, but also Namecoin, Namecoin, why did Namecoin not work out? It's the first separate thing from Bitcoin, the first fork of Bitcoin. So it's like, why didn't Namecoin work out? And well, it was a distribution issue. I assume there's even some research papers about how Namecoin failed because it was a distribution. One of the main things is this a distribution issue. It's like people could squat on a million names for no cost and basically ruin the whole. It's pretty cool, but it's I don't know if I'm breaking it. Let me know if I'm breaking
you're good.
it. But,
you're good.
You're back now. It broke up for a little bit, but
DNS is cool, but it's the same thing. It's similar. Well, one thing is it's built on Ethereum, and Ethereum has issues, but it's also, even if Ethereum didn't have issues, Bitcoin can't rely on Ethereum. You can't rely on it. If you want to do naming stuff for Bitcoin, for example, BIP 353, you don't want to have to rely on Ethereum. You need it on Bitcoin. But also, I don't think ENS, took into account top level things like that. It's all on .eth. So and other issues like scaling issues and stuff. So yeah, that it's all just trying to learn from the past. Learn why hasn't decentralized naming taken off yet? What caused some of these things not to work, and just trying to learn based on those. And so yeah, that's how we came up with this stuff.
You bring out some of these kind of trade-offs, and I agree that any new idea, you're always standing on the shoulders of prior efforts. I mean, at least even if you don't bring forward some element, it's because a conscious decision, is made that, okay, this part of that didn't work, but this other thing did. And one of the criticisms I've seen towards Spaces is that, well, it takes so long to get a name registered because you have to go through this auction process, and there's a there's a 10 days at a minimum, well, really 11 just to get into the auction. And that's too long. And I think this comes down to a point of education about why it's too long. And this is an intentional design decision with the protocol. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Jason Lowry's software premise, but one of the things that really impressed me about that is that Bitcoin network is the global energy-bound state machine, and because of its nature and how it's effectively transmuting energy into a digital form that can't be spoofed, there's a whole new layer of applications that use these attributes as a positive. Like the fact that it takes so long to get a top-level name is as a positive attribute, and that's it's a spam deterrent for one. I mean, you just can't launch a lot of spammy stuff into it because it takes so long. So I think part of, and Jason and I, really feel it's important to just kind of help educate people around that. Yeah, you don't think of the fact that it takes so long, or, oh, somebody already got that top level name. Now I have to buy it off the secondary marketplace. Don't think of these as like, hindrances. These are positive attributes to the protocol that give us a much more robust ecosystem. And like you say, from these prior efforts, it's like, if these things aren't addressed, then you get something that just never takes off, that never gets adopted. And if it never gets adopted, it doesn't matter how much design and thought you put into it. All right.
Yeah.
So Jason, do you have any more things you want to ask?
Yeah, I got a few. So how does Spaces protocol differ from other decentralized naming systems? And why do you believe it's fundamentally better?
Well, I think the things that we talked about, like making it, well, first putting it on Bitcoin, making it cypherpunk, no token, no pre-mine, no foundation. So I think that's where it differs. I guess I think it's the best design naming system right now out there, decentralized naming system out there right now. And I'm open-minded, like if other things come out and it's better, well, okay, fine. That's good. That's actually good. So, but I think right now, like we've taken I think we've done, and a lot of credit goes to Buffer. Like he's built this thing, all himself basically. So, but he, we've built it really considering all the past naming systems or current naming systems that are out there based also on the experience of my experience with traditional DNS and stuff. So, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, that answers it. Follow-up question to that would be, what would you say to the Bitcoin purists who argue that Bitcoin should only be used for money and that any arbitrary data or non-financial use, like naming, actually hurts its core monetary properties?
I can understand where they're coming from because I love Bitcoin and the money problem. I love that, and I wouldn't want anything to hurt that, definitely. But I guess what I would say to these people is the conclusion I came to, which is I think, The way that I think of it now is that the block space is the super valuable thing. It's this decentralized ledger, this decentralized database, and money was the first like killer app for that, for using that space, and it's important. But I think there are other important things that could use that space that don't take away and in fact help the other things, like help the money aspect, which is like naming. So if we could anchor in naming into that block space, I don't think it takes anything away from the money aspect, and in fact, it makes Bitcoin more secure because there's another use case. There's higher bidding for the space, so it makes the space more valuable, and which makes it more secure because the miners will have more incentive to mine on it. So I don't see how it takes anything away, and in fact, I see how it just makes it more secure. That's what I would say to them.
I think that's a great position. I think it's great to hear you say that as kind of the founding project person, because a lot of people these days are going to come to it with that presumption. It's like, oh, this person, this idea came out of like a total disregard for the money aspect of Bitcoin. And it's just not the case. When I talk about this in our groups and stuff, I like to say, well, when you think about it, money is information. Like the Bitcoin ledger was designed to record ledger entries. It's called a ledger for a reason because it is a global, common, storage of entries of who has what. So the very nature of money is information. And if that doesn't kind of, convince them, I like to say, well, having being able to put extra attributes onto that money, is also very important. I have this use case in a wallet I'm developing around this, which is like, okay, I paid for something, but what was it that I paid for? Having even an identifier that I can refer back to a receipt and reconcile it against the list of things I sold for Bitcoin can be a very small piece of information. Think of it like a barcode or something that you scanned that associated the product that was purchased with the purchase itself. So that's non-monetary use, if you want to call it, but it kind of is. So if you can kind of make that case, then the next thing is like, well, other things, are as useful as well. It's like, maybe I want to send my, my nephew some money for birthday and say, put happy birthday, on the transaction, so that they can always look back at that as kind of like a concert ticket. I went to the concert, I spent it, I experienced it, but I have this ticket stub that kind of is a recollection of that transaction. So, and these then kind of build up. Each use case is a little more extra. I don't necessarily need a picture of the ticket stub. That's getting to be a JPEG now, more data. And I think it's important also just to be considerate of the node runners that, the more we put on there, the more resources it takes. Now you can say, well, Moore's law in that, space and compute gets cheaper and transfer gets cheaper. But I still think these cases are all very valid, and these aren't blowing up the data set, the UXT-UXO set, the data side of things. So, and like I said at the beginning, these recent statistics show that this is it seems to be kind of a nothing burger, but with Core 30 having basically unlimited, very large limits, it doesn't necessarily mean that the new abuse can't occur. A new use case can't jump in and like suddenly have huge data requirements. I mean, we saw the runes kind of wave that happened a couple of years ago and how it drove up, fees and stuff for about 2 months maybe. It was pretty expensive to do a transaction. So.
Yeah, and just also to point out, like, we really considered this in the design aspect. Like, we really didn't want to bloat the blockchain, or we we wanted to be anchored into Bitcoin, but we didn't want to like spam Bitcoin, and we designed it specifically in that way. So it leaves a really light footprint, and that's why the whole second layer, like, you can't just have a billion names on Bitcoin. So we designed it specifically for that. And another thing, I think some Bitcoiners, well, not like, I think when I've talked with some core developers and stuff, they understand this point, but I think maybe some people, when they hear this, they, like, when we say the auction proceeds are burned, like we're burning Bitcoin, I think a lot of people are like, why? Don't burn Bitcoin. Yeah. Like, but I think, I think it's just the sound, like maybe even if we just use a different word, like we're donating Bitcoin or something, I think that would make a difference for people. But like when I was at the, BitDevs and stuff, and they they think a lot of the people I talked to said that's the smartest approach and seems really, good. But yeah, some other people, when they first hear that burning, they're like, they don't like it, but.
Yeah. So Spaces protocol uses about 60 bytes for the top level spaces and about 40 for the subspaces. Do you think the ordinals and the JPEGs on Bitcoin hurt Spaces protocol, gave it a bad taste in people's mouths when they're seeing any data on Bitcoin?
I don't know. I mean, I know it did. A lot of people did not like that stuff,
right?
And I understand. Yeah, you don't want to bloat it up the blockchain with like a bunch of crap. But at the same time, I think people, including myself, were like, well, at least some new stuff is happening. Like, it's cool that like new use cases can be built on Bitcoin, and if Bitcoin is built in a way that's solid, then these really shouldn't, this shouldn't have that, it shouldn't negatively affect it too much. So I think, probably it divided some people to be like hardcore, like Bitcoin is money only and like everything else sucks. So maybe, it did leave a bad like some people will not even consider Spaces because of that. But I think, hopefully, so maybe you're right, but hopefully other people see that, like, okay, well, some other stuff can be built on Bitcoin and it doesn't hurt Bitcoin, and it in fact makes it more valuable and useful, and it's cool to see like exciting new things being built on Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. Jason and I, in a prior episode, we touched on open timestamps as a good example of something else that's not monetary, but very low impact on Bitcoin, anchored on Bitcoin, and yet is completely a non-monetary use case. It's just like recording something that can't be changed, that can't be unrecorded. It's one of the most important attributes of the Bitcoin blockchain. Another aspect of this, and that I think while we have you here today, maybe would be great to kind of bring in, we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but not addressed it. And I think it goes to this kind of idea or the perception that people have that Spaces protocol is just going to, eat up a bunch of Bitcoin space, and it's just not. The thing we want to do is the subspaces and how that differs completely. And maybe we can talk. You can explain a little bit. We don't have to get into all the particulars, but just give people a sense of, we can make a lot of names with no additional impact on the blockchain. So give us just like a little summary of that. And this is something that Jason and I will probably get into in much more depth in the upcoming episodes. So don't feel like you have to, talk about every last little bit of it.
Yeah. So we designed it to be like two in some ways it's inspired by traditional domains with like .com and .net and .io and stuff being the top level, and then under that the second level. It's kind of our thinking that like that was that design is helpful in a lot of ways. One, because you can anchor the top level in Bitcoin, and then the second level you can kind of do similar to like Lightning Network. You can with zero knowledge proofs you can scale to billions and billions, something you can't do directly on the blockchain. So for scaling reasons, it's important for us to do that, but also distribution-wise, it's important too, because there's only a certain number of like. The whole reason you have a naming system is so that you can have an easily to remember name that you can give to people, and then that can be converted to IP address or Bitcoin payment address or anything, Nostr, Nostr key, or so. And there's only once you get, I don't know how many there are, like 20,000 memorable names, and then it starts to get harder. You can't get. And so, but when you scale it to the second level, it suddenly makes it a lot more. And this is what I learned from my work with the traditional domain system. Is like .io domains became very valuable. Like memorable short .io domains became very valuable because all the .coms were taken, and so like a lot of startups started building on .io domains, and then .ai. Also, a similar thing happened with that, and the reason I think is because of distribution. Like so it makes it so that there's a lot more value. There's a lot more valuable names that you can get, and you can scale it well, anchor it in Bitcoin, but scale it outside of Bitcoin. So, yeah.
You want to touch on the zero knowledge proof kind of aspect of it, the magic?
Yeah. What would you?
Well, just that the reason this scalability is enabled is kind of unlocked through this kind of magical math properties, which, as I understand it, came kind of largely from the Ethereum side of things, and that is this concept of zero knowledge proofs, that you can prove something either exists and doesn't or doesn't exist through a chain of what's called zero knowledge proofs. These become kind of a representation of the top level space and what's occupying it, and it's completely definable without divulging anything else about what else exists. So you can, and this kind of ties to a certificate, which gives the top level name owner, a definable kind of property right to that top level name, and then maybe kind of the whole. Maybe we can kind of wrap on taking that back on chain. So if you can explain enough of it just to kind of whet people's appetite about how, you get a subname, you get a certificate, and then as an optional additional step, if you don't want to be tethered to the operator, the top level name operator, you can then create a pointer. I think the important thing is to leave people with a sense that once I have this name, it becomes complete sovereign property.
Yeah. So so a second level name, is issued through like a operator. Somebody who owns a top level space can delegate like an operator, or they could do it themselves to issue second level names on this. And using zero knowledge proofs, they can issue. So like, for example, like at Bitcoin, if you wanted Andrew at Bitcoin, which you have, I think, right? You're issued like a certificate, and then you own. So the proof is committed on chain, so it's anchored in Bitcoin, and so you'll have proof that you own that name, and nobody can take it from you, not even the operator or the top level owner of at Bitcoin. If somehow they get hit by a bus and they can't update anymore, or they have malicious intent or something like that and try to do something, you can take your name online. You can take your name on chain, and it'll be treated as a top level at that point, the top level space. So basically, once you have it, nobody can take it away from you, and you'll have it, and you can have proof that you own that name, and no one else has control over it.
Right, and I think it's such a key point to make about Spaces protocol, that this sovereignty, because we see this sovereignty violated in so many other ways in the internet, you could say, well, free speech, property, other rights are being challenged, and I think having kind of a really solid understanding and communicating it consistently that, this naming system is your property. It is something that, you might want to consider in estate planning. How does that work? Because just like, the family farm, it's theoretically going to be around forever, and that can be very, very valuable. And again, Jason and I will talk about this more in detail and what it means. I think I'll throw it back to Jason. Is there anything else you want to kind of close in on, or last things to
I have
topic to mention?
three quick questions. So one that just came to my head, we're talking about all this, Bit 110. Have you looked into Bit 110, Mike, and does it impact Spaces protocol at all?
No, sorry, I don't know. I don't know that much about BIP 110. I haven't looked at it that much.
Okay. I think Andrew and I did look into it, and from our standpoint, it doesn't impact Spaces, but just curious if you knew anything about it.
Yeah, Buffer would probably know better.
Okay.
I don't,
All right,
we could talk about it more in another episode, but it's like, as it's stated now, even if it was enacted, would not affect Spaces as we understand it. I think it's just important to kind of mention it here, so we kind of have it in the context of this discussion.
All right, so one of the biggest knocks against decentralized naming projects is complexity and low adoption. How do you see Spaces avoiding the fate of earlier attempts and actually becoming the default way people own their online identities?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I mean, adoption is one of those things that, like, you don't know. Like, it's the same thing. I remember, like, with Bitcoin, it's like, oh, nobody will ever, nobody will adopt it. People are happy with money, and it's too hard. It's too, like, people. So you never know. I think the thing you just have to do is just try to make something you think is really important and make it as best as you can, and then see how it goes from there. I think, the advantages we have is that it's on Bitcoin. It's there's already a large ecosystem. A lot of people, I think a lot of people see the need for it. So, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
All right, and then my last question. Go ahead, Andrew. You got something?
Well, I just wanted to add on to that. You mentioned ecosystem. It was kind of maybe if you get a chance to have you back, and things have matured a little more, we can talk about the broader ecosystem that needs to be built out to really make this viable in many different ways. Also, I try to speak on it as much as I can. I know Jason and I are putting this kind of episodes together just to kind of spread the word and have a resource that people can look at and understand it better. I'm also going to be speaking at the Bitcoin conference coming up in a couple months, and it looks like I'm going to be presenting a workshop of some sort on Spaces protocol. So anything I can do and work it into discussions, I look for those opportunities, because I really feel this has got a lot of legs, and it could be really the solution that really gets us a lot further down the road in terms of these more sophisticated applications on top of Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, it's so great that you guys, help promote this and talk about it and stuff. I'm so happy that you guys do that. And I think once we really launch subspaces to mainnet and can actually start building things, building some cool things and I think that will help a lot too. So.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Jason, I'll let you.
You actually answered my last question with that, so that was pretty.
Well,
good.
let's let Mike go and wrap it. You want to give any closing thoughts, Mike?
Yeah.
You want to leave anybody with anything?
If you want to check it out, spacesprotocol.org and at bitcoin.com. We're also launching our wallet Nacho. It'll be at nacho.io. But yeah, thanks for doing this, you guys, and I'm really happy to join you here and talk about it.
So yeah, I was just quickly, just so it's on the screen a little bit, Nacho.io.
I don't think so. Yeah, nothing's there yet, but it will be.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's okay.
All right, well, the Spaces protocol, here's the main website. If you're interested in it, check it out. As the docs and the white paper are very good at giving a really good detailed technical discussion of how the transactions are composed and things. The marketplace is the secondary, the aftermarket for top-level names. And yeah, I think more to come. And with that, I'll throw it back to you, Jason, kind of wrap it up.
All right. Great interview. Thanks for joining, Mike. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you, everyone.